All right, we're back. Tasty Crypto Show. I'm Ryan Grace. With me today, of course, Katie McGarrigle. It's 2025, Katie. Happy New Year. Welcome to the show.
Happy New Year. How you been?
Yeah, it's been a bit. I've been pretty good.
Each other, but
yeah, I see you around the office in the lunch line here and there.
Yeah.
We just haven't done the show since like mid-December, it seems like. But we're back. I've been well. How about yourself?
Doing good.
Good?
Yeah.
Good?
Starting the year off strong. It's
What's
yucky out today, but
it is yucky out today. That's a good way to describe it.
you know what? I'll still take this though over 2 feet of snow on the ground.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
because nobody shovels in Chicago, and as somebody who walks to work mostly as my commute, I'm not trying to slip and slide all over these damn icy sidewalks.
I hear you. Yeah, I would take this over the 2 feet of snow as well. I'd take this over the negative temperatures too. I don't mind a little bit of snow, 30
Give me
degrees.
like a 45 is like the coldest we get. Like I'll be happy.
Paradise.
But I think we're at like 26 degrees right now. So
Well,
something like that.
we can dream up to the
can.
40s.
We can. A couple months away, maybe mid-March, maybe by St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, right.
There again.
Sure. We'll see.
I just want to see the sun. That's really what it's all about for me. But yeah, no, I've been good. And there's been a lot of action going on in crypto in the last few days. So it feels really good to kind of be back in here with you.
Yeah, we're going to get back into the swing of things. This is no longer where do I start? This is, again, closer to how do I stop? We're inching closer to that end of the spectrum. But Katie will be joining the show once a week. We've got other guests planned as well, a whole slew of content coming your way, a lot of new stuff this year. So I'm excited about that. And to your point, we're kicking it off here with a bang to start the month, start the year. Crypto moving higher. We're going to jump into some of the market activity, the action that we're seeing, and discuss that in just a second. And we have a surprise. I believe you might be entering into the arena. We'll talk about that later on, or maybe it's no longer a surprise as I have ruined it. But before we do, Katie, we've got to shout out the chat on YouTube. If you're watching the show on Tasty Trade, no shade, Tasty Live, no shade over there. But you can't type crazy things into the chat unless you're on YouTube. So get over to the Tasty Live YouTube channel and fire up that live chat. We've got Flower Power, Jack P, Ken M, Splendid, Donna Ski. What up?
What up?
The gang's all here.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
2025.
Any resolutions? Not to get too personal. But
A couple, but
what are we working on?
Well, I am about to, I know it's like not what you should do. You should be like consistent, but every couple of months, I'm like a very all or nothing.
Okay, pedal to the floor.
I see, yeah, I'm either on the wagon or I'm off the wagon.
Fair,
So
okay.
I am doing a 75 schmedium, as I like to call it, with my cousin. So it's, it's like one of those things. It's just help you discipline and sticking to your goals and working out, eating well.
This is called a 75. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar.
It's called a 75 hard is the real one.
Okay.
It's 75 days.
Oh,
and then you follow
okay.
certain things that you're supposed to do every day. But in the 75 hard, if you screw up, you're supposed to start all over again. And I don't want to live in a black and white only world. I think it's okay if you want to have a cheat meal one day, as long as you don't have a cheat month.
Right.
So I guess that would be a resolution of
Keep
sorts.
you sane. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it.
Trying to make sure I'm taking my supplements,
Yeah.
my vitamins, my creatine, all those things. Trading wise, I'm absolutely looking forward to just dabbling more in crypto as both a speculative tool as well as an investment. I want to do some more pairs trades. I want to do a couple more micro future swing trades, all that good stuff. But enough about me. What about yours?
Hell yeah. Resolutions. I don't know. I'm doing the dry January.
Me too.
We're 6 days in. I was thinking about having a beer earlier today, but I'm going to stay strong. There's no beer here to be had anyways.
There's one Miller Lite, I think, or a Miller Lite banquet or something, a Coors banquet in the fridge.
Yeah, it was
That's all you get.
I was just thinking man, that does sound like it would taste good right now. It's been a long couple days, long weekend. But no, I am focused on, I guess, just, trying to be healthier, that kind of thing.
Sure.
Take less drugs,
Yeah. You're like a
better
big
food.
druggy.
Yeah, less of the alcohol, better food, less sugar,
Yeah.
freezing cold showers, all that stuff.
Yeah, see, that's tough for me. I try to do like I've never done like a full-fledged cold plunge per se, but like I try to do like a couple minutes like at the end of the shower, and even that's like hard.
Wakes you up. Yeah, it can be painful.
Yeah.
But
I'm with you.
makes you stronger.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. It's a mental test as well as a physical one. But
Well, looking at the chat, we have a few resolutions from everybody that's watching. I guess that's the question of the day. What is your 2025 resolution or resolutions?
yeah.
Put it in the chat. Shout out real quick. Grumpy Mike lurking over here.
Yep.
Mr. Green, Big Deal, Donuts, Flower Power. Jason Tatum is here as well. We're popping bottles, and I like what Grumpy Mike has to say. Setting realistic goals, which is really what you want to do. You want to be realistic as you head into the new year. He's going to start drinking again. It's been dry since January. That's too long. And try to pack on some pounds. It is bulking season. So good luck to Grumpy Mike trying to gain those 30 pounds by June. Best wishes.
I believe in you.
Absolutely. Katie, let's jump into it. Bitcoin's at 102,000 ETH, pushing 3,700. Volatility's come in a little bit. Let's go around the horn. Crypto market update. And stop me anywhere because some of this relates to the topics that we've discussed previously. I don't think you and I really jumped into the markets necessarily on this show. We tried to stay away from that and talk more about kind of the basics and high level as to why crypto is interesting. But now we're getting into the weeds. I'll go through how I look at this, and I want to focus on volatility. We'll look at market cap dominance, look at correlations, what's driving the market, and then we'll get into maybe a little bit of trading.
Yeah, I would love that because like I think the piece I'm still missing is like, as you start to trade, right, you build up like a muscle memory or a habit of like what you do to start to get market awareness every single day. So I would love for you to kind of walk through your train of thought. And as you're looking at prices for the various like cryptos that are out there, what like signals like, oh, extreme or, oh, like inside range to you?
Absolutely. Well, let's do that. Let's start with how we think about price action and momentum here. Performance and relative performance especially is really important for me in terms of how I look at this. So, first thing I'm going to look at is just what is the change in the week, the month, the 3-month basis, kind of what's the trend there. I also have an understanding, as I think most do that watch this show, of what's realistic. So a 9% move in 1 week in Bitcoin isn't that much. We've seen that this has 20% moves quite often, over 220 times so far, I believe. We've seen a 20% or more move in Bitcoin since inception.
Sure.
So 9% up or down on the week is pretty normal. I'll look first at what that kind of weekly momentum looks like, as well as the monthly and 3-month. But the point is, you want to stay on the right side of the trend here. This is an asset where when you look at this as a U.S. investor, obviously you can't sell short the spot market. You can trade the ETF short. You can now trade the options on those ETFs. You can trade the futures. Most trading activity does occur outside the U.S., and there are futures markets where you can short this asset. But, most people are long only. And so it's something that trends one way or the other. You want to stay on the right side of the trend, and you want to trade the volatility or the range within that trend.
Okay.
But that's the first thing that I'm going to pay attention to. What's the trend? Has anything changed? I'll also measure the strength of that trend or any signals around whether things are changing by looking at exponential moving averages and simply just looking at the crossovers for daily timeframes, weekly timeframes, and also monthly timeframes. Longer time periods are stronger signals, though they're slower, and to some extent, this is all backward looking, but I found that it works pretty well. So that said, this is almost as bullish as you get. We just saw Bitcoin Cash flip from a bearish momentum on the daily basis to now neutral. Everything else has flipped from bearish to bullish.
Right.
That's a positive sign. When I see something like that, where we've gone from bearish momentum to now back to bullish momentum, I'm back to adding to those dips in some things that I like, whether it's Bitcoin or it's Doge or it's others. That's what you want to see. Additionally, if something were to change on the weekly basis and then certainly on the monthly basis, that's really going to get my attention.
Sure.
So obviously the dailies are going to break down first, but once you get confirmation of an extended move there on a weekly basis and you go from bullish to neutral and then bearish, get out of the way.
Right.
The next step is the monthlies flip, and you could be in a period where you have a multi-month bear market, you have a multi-year bear market, or you have a multi-year bull market. You want to be on the right side of that trend. And that's all we're looking at here, as well as implied and realized volatilities and what has changed there. So when you look at this all the time, then you have a great sense of, without even looking at the IV rank, which we will focus on, but you have a great sense of, is vol high or low? I can tell you right now, Bitcoin implied volatility has been stuck between 50 and 60% on an annualized basis for most of the year.
Okay.
So this is pretty normal. This isn't anything that we haven't seen before. We've got a bit of a bounce, and when you look at the 1 month performance, things are still deeply in the red from that correction that we experienced towards the end of 2024.
Sure. Okay.
So that's where we're at. The smaller market cap stuff is usually more volatile, so it's also no surprise to see Bitcoin's up 9%, Dogecoin's up 24%, Solana's up 15%. Again, pretty normal in terms of what we've seen. I also like to look at, year-to-date performance.
Yeah.
So we only have a few days here since the start of the year. Bitcoin's up 10%, ETH's up 11 then, so that's a 1% outperformance and the same thing. So, kind of what we're seeing here is a little bit of outperformance outside of just Bitcoin.
Okay. What's the deal with like Litecoin? I feel like, it was talked about a lot prior, but maybe not as much. Like I just never hear it talked about.
Yeah, I don't trade it that often. If there's a clear signal where there looks like there's a trade setup, maybe I'll go into this and get long for a second. I put it on here because honestly, it's one of the few tokens that are offered through the tastytrade brokerage through Zero Hash. As that list expands, we'll expand it here. You can see that we've added Doge, but I don't trade Litecoin or Bitcoin Cash that frequently. That said, they are very volatile. Litecoin has a realized vol on a 30-day annualized basis of well over 100%. So when you do have some large dips in there, and these are, for the most part, positively correlated with one another, you can get a little bit more juice or more volatility in something like Litecoin,
right,
if in fact it does trade in line with what Bitcoin is doing, but I'm not in it that much.
Sure. Okay. Just figured I'd ask because, like we're saying,
why is it up here?
Yeah.
There's probably other tokens we could add.
It had its moment in the sun.
Exactly.
Now it's in the shade.
Yeah,
now.
But it does. It certainly moves around. And if you've followed this, you've seen this go from the 70s to 150 or so. Bitcoin Cash is traded up into the 500 level. So you do see some pretty big moves here. Worth having on the radar, I guess. So that's a quick look at performance. Structurally pretty bullish out there to start the year. I think when you look at ranges here, we'll talk about expected moves in just a second, but your new trading range in Bitcoin has been pretty much 90 to 110.
Yep.
And that's where the volatility kind of lines up with as well. ETH, we'll call that range about 3 to 4. And your mid-range there, we really haven't been able to break down much. I think the floor has more so been about 3,300, but that recent range is about 1,000 points wide.
Okay. Do you anticipate, and I know that we're obviously saying we're in like a bullish market right now, but like especially with everything that's due to kind of go on this month, do you think we're going to go back to 95 or are we going to go up to 115 first? I know that that's a very loaded question.
Yeah, it's a good question. It kind of seems like we are experiencing that move back up to the top of the range, whether that's 115 or not, but we were just at 95. When you look at how we've...
110, whatever's like equidistant.
Yeah, I think, the way that this is trading right now, it seems like we're bouncing back up to 110. Now, can we break above that or not? We shall see. Quite often, this kind of ping pongs within a range over time quite frequently. And so that's what we've seen. We traded down to call it 89.90, bounced off of there almost perfectly, and are trading back up above 100,000. If you can hold 100,000, then I think, yes, you will drift back towards the top of that range there the longer that you stay up there. But again, whether we can break out or not, 110 to 90 has been the recent range.
Okay.
So that's where I would, that's what I'm looking at if I was buying at 90, I'd probably be taking some profits, here or a little bit higher if we trade there. And that's kind of how I think about trading around the position.
So I have one more question for you that you just kind of sparked within me. So in the same way that the whole world was fascinated with like meme stocks and the concept of a short squeeze, is that something that you see as like repeatable in a crypto market, or is the nature of the product, like we've talked about how there are institutions now that are like heavying up on their exposure to the crypto space. So like, is the concept of a short squeeze still something that could happen in crypto, or is the nature of it make it less of a likelihood? It's already like a low likelihood in the typical equity markets, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Can things get kind of jumpy? Can they get kind of squeezy?
Yeah.
In that sense, illiquid.
Yeah.
Kind of big moves. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, like there's meme coins, so there's elements of like that catapulting or parabolic move, but like the nature of a short squeeze, meaning that like, they're capitulating essentially.
You wouldn't see that as much, at least over a sustained period, because
not as many people are short on the other side.
Yes, not in the same way where the covering of that short position is what feeds on itself when we look at something like what happened with just the extreme move in GameStop or AMC to an extent. Yeah. That said, you do have perpetual futures markets and very leveraged derivatives markets where positions are auto-liquidated when certain levels are breached, just given the leverage that's built up in those positions. And so that can feed on itself and extend some of these moves both to the upside and the downside at times when some of these stops get run, if you want to look at it that way, or just some of these levels get breached. Sure. You don't necessarily stay up there, but that was your push from just arbitrarily 105 to 110, and then you kind of come back, right? Because you had a lot of short covering. So you do see that at times, but I wouldn't look at this as something where you have massive short positions that are built up in something that has been beaten down and it's prime for some massive reversal as those shorts cover. Got it. Wouldn't look at it that way, but this is so small and so illiquid. And when we look at something like Bitcoin, we're talking about an asset that has limited supply and it's still relatively early stage. So with such a small market cap, it doesn't take a lot of money to move this one way or the other. There have been times where we've seen some governments, such as Germany, dumping coins or selling coins in the open market that have been confiscated from some hacks. That's had a negative impact on the price, and to what size? Probably about 2 billion or so. Okay. Seeing these massive inflows into the ETFs, right around 1 billion to 2 billion on a weekly basis. So that's been pretty supportive. So not perfect, but those are kind of the size of the moves that you're starting to see move this around 10 to +% on a weekly basis, whether it's up or down. Okay. But yeah, it's just really illiquid.
Got it.
One other point to kind of the supply dynamic, especially when you look at Bitcoin, is that most people just hold this, so it doesn't move. Right. And that's another reason why, again, given how illiquid it is, a small amount of money can really move this one way or the other.
Yeah. Okay, makes sense.
But less of a short squeeze, I'd say.
All right, I will let you keep going.
No, those are great questions. I mean, that's what I want to. That's what I want to get out of this, and is kind of naturally the next steps. Where do I start? It's like, well, okay, where do I start? Crypto, technology. I've got the investment perspective and the use case there, but like markets, how do we put this to use? In kind of real terms. So that's how I look at performance. The next thing that I want to point out is just relative performance. I think this is helpful to find some signals. So the first thing I look at, Katie, is Bitcoin market cap dominance. That symbol is BTC.D. Right now it's at 58%. What that means is that when we have a measurable total market cap for crypto assets, let's just arbitrarily say it's 3 trillion. I think it's higher than that. But if that's the size of the market, what percentage is Bitcoin? Well, right now, Bitcoin's market cap is 58% of that market. So Bitcoin is very dominant. And when we look at where that is on a historical basis, it's close to a 3-year high. How do I use that? Why does that matter? Well, what it tells me is that, again, this has still been a market that's largely been driven by flows into Bitcoin. Now, some of that's new money flow into these ETFs, but it's going into Bitcoin. And maybe it doesn't stay there, but that's where it's going, or that's where it's been going. There's other pockets of capital that are sloshing around, and you do see some outperformance at times, but Bitcoin market cap dominance has been ripping higher all year. When that starts to meaningfully roll over and you actually see that trend in the other direction, well, that's a signal that capital might be flowing out of Bitcoin and into alternative assets, into ETH, Solana, others, memes. And yes, again, you do see those pockets of performance. We had a period over the summer and more so into the fall and into where we are now where meme coins really took off, especially on Solana. But Bitcoin market cap dominance has been elevated close to 60%. So I don't think it's late in the cycle if we use this as a single measurement.
Got it. But if you looked at like the 3-month, for instance, like, okay, Bitcoin has lost 1% of market share, if you will. And clearly there's been a lot more activity into some of those meme coins, like you're saying.
Yeah.
And some of like ETH and Solana have lost a little bit of share at a higher clip, but yeah, am I interpreting that correctly?
Absolutely. And this is what I'd want to look at to try to derive some signals. So we go back to momentum and take the same approach that we have with the price momentum. So when we look at these moving averages, they are lagged, they are backward looking, but they do offer signals. And what I've seen is that this has gone from completely bullish across all time frames to it's starting to break down. Now we've seen this break down on the daily basis. I'd want to see confirmation on a longer time frame, but you're starting to see some of it. You could just see this as a short-term kind of move, but let's keep an eye on it. If it continues, we might really want to rotate into or start to bid some of these pullbacks in things like ETH, Solana, and others, but they've been doing pretty well. So you're starting to see some signs of that. So you look at Bitcoin market cap dominance to start with. Then I want to look at the ratios when I price other tokens in Bitcoin. So when we price everything in dollars, it all goes up in the same direction. But we can find potential opportunities for trades when we price that token in Bitcoin as the underlying currency. So our pair is ETH Bitcoin, Solana Bitcoin.
Right.
You're looking at the relative performance then of ETH versus Bitcoin, Solana versus Bitcoin.
I think is a currency cross.
Exactly. Is exactly right.
Cool.
So looking there, it's still been, as I like to call it, a trashy trade when you look at ETH BTC, but there are some signs of life. Momentum has shifted for a moment, and we've seen that at points before. ETH BTC is still kind of near a 3-year low, but that's what I want to keep an eye on. So then if I have a makeup of 3 or 4 or 5 tokens, whatever my portfolio, let's just say it's Bitcoin, it's ETH, and Solana, and I'm rotating across those 3, there might be times where I'm buying all 3 of them, but I want to go overweight from a performance perspective on ETH versus Solana because it's really trading a lot better than Bitcoin is. Even though they're all going up in dollar terms, well, ETH is ripping against Bitcoin. Maybe I want to be long more ETH versus Bitcoin.
Got it.
Or rotate out of Bitcoin. You don't necessarily have to even go short. It's not like we're putting that ratio trade on or that spread where I'm long Bitcoin and I'm long ETH and I'm short Bitcoin. You don't have to necessarily do that, but you might say, oh, I want to buy a little bit more ETH than Bitcoin because it's outperforming.
Got it. Okay. Makes sense. Yeah. It's the same thing as like pairs trades and equity indices where you're doing like E-mini and a small cap or E-mini and NASDAQ where NASDAQ is more weighted to tech, right?
It's exactly right. So yeah, just looking at how fast are we going at the end of the day when we go through some of these dashboards. The next thing that I want to point out is our volatility dashboard, and this really relates to the trend and how we trade this. You might have a long-term investment in this. You want to pay attention to what's happening in the market, but on a short-term basis, you want to trade around that position. This is what I use for that. So the first thing I want to look at is just where is implied vol, what's realized vol, and then what's the premium or discount in the market. Right now, there's about a 34% premium. When we look at Bitcoin options, realized vol is 44%, implied is closer to 60. And then we can rank that like we do anything else. So your 1-year IV rank is kind of mid-range,
sure,
a little bit more elevated on a shorter term time horizon. Do the same thing for ETH, but more importantly, when we take that implied vol and we take the spot price, what's the expected move? Mm-hmm. So the expected move, about $8,000 for Bitcoin, $350 for ETH. These have been the numbers that we've seen regardless of where the spot price is. Everything's been pretty rigid, I would say, over the last few months, over the last half year or so. But how to use this? Identify the trend, bullish trend, identify the range, sell a little bit at the top of the range, buy a little bit back at the bottom. When you have a market that's bearish, you're going to short it at the top of that range. You're going to cover those shorts at the bottom of the range, but you want to stay on the right side of the trend. It's really as simple as that. That's how I traded it, at least, and it keeps me on the right side of the trade.
And I love being able to see this in dollar terms. I know, like, not everybody needs that, but for me, as somebody who's new to this space, it's so easy to understand, okay, like, what is my normal risk tolerance in an options trade or a futures trade? And then how do I reapply that to something that is newer to me? And this is like a great way to be able to see that.
Yeah, I think it really helps. It puts some perspective around kind of what's possible, so you don't get as excited when you see a six-figure price. It goes to 111,000 off of 95,000. I like to say, that was a $9.50 stock, just went to $1.10 or went to $10. So, that's kind of the way that you look at it. But look at this in percentage terms, and then those are your ranges, and trade accordingly.
Love it.
So that is where we are with volatility. Again, to start the year here, you are getting a bounce in the market, but nothing out of the ordinary. This is just a bullish trend that's continued and has been in place for the better part of a year, certainly the better part of 6 months. So we'll keep an eye on that. And when something changes, we will certainly get out of positions. And at times, maybe we'll go short in the derivatives market, but it just is not a market environment, in my opinion, where that's really the trade. You can make money that way on the opposite side. But for me, in this product specifically, I tend to just want to go with the flow.
Sure. And maybe you considered something where if you had core positions in crypto, you could do a smaller thing where you're short as a hedge in a highly correlated product.
Absolutely.
But again, that comes with its own set of nuances and dynamics that you need to be thoughtful about.
Yes.
Lovely.
One last thing I want to point out, Katie, before we wrap things up, just a quick look at cross-asset correlations. At times, you don't see much of a correlation, but when you do start to see things strengthen here, it's not a negative or a positive. Just objectively speaking, S&P is near an all-time high. Bitcoin's near an all-time high. A lot of risk assets have been trading together, and we've seen some stronger correlations between things like Bitcoin and gold, Bitcoin and the S&P, than we have at times previously. If I look at a 5-year correlation or correlations on a daily basis across a 5-year period between the S&P and Bitcoin, that's close to like 0.30. We're a bit elevated then on a multi-week or multi-month basis, but it's not like, okay, the equity market and Bitcoin trade at 0.80
right.
or anything like that.
Lockstep. Sure.
That said, the correlation between Ethereum and Bitcoin has come down a little bit. We were in the high 80s for a good part of last year, and now we're 0.7.
Okay. So still strong, but not as strong.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Something to keep an eye on. And we'll talk about this in more detail and kind of get into the rhythm of running through these things a little bit quicker on the show. There's not a single data point that we look at or any real takeaway, right? Oh, the correlation between the Russell and Bitcoin is 0.55. What do you do with that? Mm-hmm. Well, there's nothing to really do with that, but all of this collectively in aggregate is something that you want to pay attention to, and then you can derive signals from. Because when we start to see certain things break down from a performance perspective, you see outperformance on a relative basis, you see Bitcoin market cap do one thing or the other, volatility has a change. Those signals are all tradable when you start to go through and you check the box. Okay, this is happening, and we can confirm it by looking at these different signals. And that's what I use this dashboard for. It's really, again, how fast are we going? We're trying to win the race, and we don't want to crash the car.
Right.
So what are the data points that we need to pay attention to?
Yeah, makes total sense. And I'm excited to build on this because this, as you know, is not necessarily how I start to build out my options and futures trades necessarily, but it's a great exercise to start to incorporate, to get familiar with this space and, like you're saying, pay attention to things that is not currently really part of my muscle memory, I guess I would say.
Well, we will get you there. We have run out of time, but before we wrap up, Katie, I alluded to this earlier. You are joining Bag Battles, entering the arena. Shelly put together a fantastic graphic here.
She's so good.
Yeah, she is. So she's going to be joining Bag Battles as well, but we need a symbol from you, and we will add it to the portfolio. Do you have anything for us yet? And if you don't have anything, it's okay. We can come back.
I had two, but I weren't sure if they were on the right networks that we needed. So the Harry Potter, Obama, Sonic, whatever.
Oh, I love it. I think we're okay there. Yeah.
Okay, because, as you know, I'm Zadie McGarrigle in the Harry Potter / Hogwarts Legacy game, so that kind of spoke to me immediately. And then the other one I was looking at, if that is not available, was Slop, just because I think that's hilarious. And it reminds me of Billy Madison with the lunch lady.
Yeah, I'm just doing a quick check here. It looks like both of these should be available. So we'll add one, whatever one you want to go with.
Obama, Sonic, whatever.
Okay, we will add that to the portfolio. Katie is in bag battles. Let's go.
Let's go.
All right, that's going to do it for our show. Victor Jones is up next with The Price of Truth. You don't want to miss it. Katie, as always, thanks for joining the show. Appreciate you having you on here.
It was great. It was a blast. Can't wait to keep it going.
Yeah, we got you in bag battles now, so that's going to be fun.
It's going to be great. I can't wait to hopefully talk a bunch of smack to you.
Yeah,
guys.
I hope you win.
Me too.
All right. Well, best of luck to you. That's going to do it for the show. I'll be back on Wednesday with a new guest, or I don't know, with Katie. We'll figure it out. But we'll be back on Wednesday. Until then, I'm Ryan.
I'm Katie.
Peace.
Peace.